to 200,000 lives in Rwanda did not begin as a spontaneous outpouring of tribal rage, but rather as a systematic campaign of killing, directed by political leaders and backed by the military. Rwanda, April 1994. This small country awash in blood. 800,000 murdered in 100 days. 3/4 of the Tutsi population slaughtered.
Nobody knew that on April 6th that the plane carrying the president of Rwanda, that same night when the plane was shut down, that the genocide would actually start right away. Nobody knew that the borders of Rwanda would be sealed, that we had no chance to exit the country.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to turn back the hand of time in that we are remembering the Rwandan genocide. We're going to hear a testimony of faith, hope, love, and forgiveness in the face of and in the wake of that horrific atrocity. Back in 1994 in Spokane, Washington, where I grew up, I remember distinctly it was a warm summer day. I was outside playing basketball. I was all alone. I remember my thoughts were with me that day. At some point I got hungry, I went inside, and I overheard my mom commenting on the news coming out of Rwanda. I was a boy, barely a teenager at the time, and it was the first time I even heard the country's name. So with the evening news blaring in the background, I remember my mom said, "They're murdering children and raping women in Rwanda." And I listened to those words and went back outside, continued playing basketball with those words heavy on my heart. I thought of the children there because I was a child. I didn't know much about the world at that time. I didn't know what genocide was. I didn't understand the true depth of horror that those people experienced. And I didn't know that exactly at that time, somewhere in southern Rwanda, in Nyanza, was a young girl who was desperately battling to survive, to stay alive. And that one day in the future, God planned to bring us together to transform my life, to make me whole, to make a family with me. 25 years later, that girl from southern Rwanda, from Nyanza, is my lovely wife, Jeanne. God truly must have known that I needed her, because I believe without her, I would be in a dark apartment somewhere, drinking my pain away. I would not be with you guys today. She's truly, in every sense of the word, my better half. She's made me, without a doubt, a better man. She's taught me so much in the 10 years we have been together. She has shown me boundless love and faithfulness, and taught me about hope and the precious gift of forgiveness, and consoled me in my pain. And today she's going to tell you her remarkable story. And she's going to tell you about the faith and hope in God that it took to survive. And she's also going to tell you about the most precious gift of forgiveness. Jeanne has opened my eyes up about the world. Growing up in Washington, I had a pretty limited view of the world. She opened my eyes about Rwanda as well, and I learned a lot about the country since meeting her. Rwanda is one of the smallest countries in Africa. It's about the state, if you look on a map, it's about the size of Massachusetts. It's a country where 800,000 to 1 million people were systematically murdered in 1994. I'm sure it's likely when Jeanne hears those numbers, she thinks of the roughly 100 family members that she lost during that time for nothing more than their ethnicity. You see, Jeanne is a member of the Tutsi ethnic group. In Rwanda, there are a total of 3. There are the Hutus, who make up 85% of the population, the group that unfortunately perpetrated and carried out the genocide. There's Jeanne's ethnic group, which makes up 10% of the population. Approximately 70% of her ethnic group was wiped out in those 100 days. And then there's a small population of pygmy people, or Twa. Prior to 1916, the Tutsis governed Rwanda through a monarchy system. However, when the Belgians colonized, they created sort of an ethnic labeling system, which eventually led to a sort of social caste system in which ethnicity was viewed as being synonymous with wealth, which of course wasn't always the case. Ethnicity was also physically distinguishable in that Tutsis were said to be much taller and thinner, and Hutus were said to be shorter and have wider noses, which also wasn't always the case because people intermarry, people come together. But these physical generalizations fed into assumptions about Hutus being farmers and workers and Tutsis being their overlords. And these divisions increased when the Hutu government seized power in the 1960s. Resentment, violence, and hatred ensued, to the point where Tutsis were pushed out of the country and they were discriminated against, and there was a lot of violence perpetrated against them. The decades leading up to 1994 were like an incubator for hatred. And somewhere along the line, the Hutu government, along with a large majority of the population, decided that the only way forward for Rwanda was the wholesale, entire elimination of Jeanne's people. They planned a killing campaign by arming civilians, by importing machetes, by training militias, by setting up a radio station that just basically ran hate 24/7. And they no longer viewed the Tutsi people as human beings. And they sought to kill every man, woman, and child, including Jeanne and her family. So Jeanne is truly a walking miracle in that she is a survivor. She has looked hardened killers in the face and walked away to tell the story. And she's managed to keep her precious spirit intact. Today she'll tell you what that was like and how she faced and persevered through faith, hope, love, and the precious gift of forgiveness.
Thank you. Good morning, church. Good morning. Well, I'm a little nervous, as you can tell. And the video you just watched, that was the reality of my life. And it was the reality of every Tutsi in Rwanda in 1994. Over the course of 3 months, 1994, I watched and listened to the cries of innocent men and women as they were being killed, hunted, and killed with machetes and clubs. I listened to the voices of women and young girls as they were chased and raped and tortured and killed. Then there was the voices of young children, younger than 5 years old, as they cried out to their killers, begging them, telling them that if they forgive them, that there will never be Tutsis again. What those young children didn't know is that we don't get to select what ethnicity or our race. We don't get to select the texture of our hair or the color of our eyes. But what's beautiful is that we are all beautiful in God's eyes. Yeah. And we are beautiful because we are created in His image. And what a privilege to know that we are all created in His image. So for those 3 months, as I listened, it was very tough for me over the years to forgive those inhumane acts that I listened to, those inhumane I watched for 3 months. You see, Rwanda is a beautiful country. It's called a country of 1,000 hills because it has so many hills and so many mountains, and it's just beautiful. But in 1994, it was the hills and the rivers and the valleys and the mountains were full of dead bodies. I remember being with my twin sisters who were 3 years old, and they would ask me, why is everybody sleeping outside? But what they didn't know was that these are dead people. Those are people who have been killed. So the water in Rwanda had turned red because the victims were thrown in the river and the lakes. Their killers did not have time to bury those up to 1 million people, so it was easy to throw them in the water so they'll be washed. So you might think of how I survived this madness. If I didn't have the Lord with me, I wouldn't be here today. He strengthened me. And for the first time when this was happening, it was Rwanda. It was happening in the 21st century in our modern history. And Rwanda was the darkest time in that country. But for us, that's when we saw God. For some of us who were praying, we felt his arms around us. It was for the first time for me praying more than I've ever prayed before. And I remember him telling me that not to be afraid, that he was with me. Not to be afraid, that he was with me. So today, I want to be able to encourage you to stay strong. Because in 1994, my faith, my body, my mind was tested to the limit. But I refuse to give up. I know the God we serve is a good God. And I say, Lord, I know I cannot do it by myself, but I want you to walk with me, to be with me. So you might be going through some stuff right now. You might be going through trials and tribulations in your life. Because you know what? Even if you haven't gone through those things, you will. It's part of life. Yeah. But if you stay strong, like Pastor Larry taught us on Sunday, not just physically strong, mentally strong, and spiritually strong, God is going to walk you through all of this. What makes the difference between us and people who do not have a relationship with God is that we can go through the same trials and pain, but we can't feel the peace from the God that we serve. Yes. You might be going through grieving process because you have lost a loved one. You might be going through pain because you have had miscarriage and cannot conceive. You might be suffering from depression, anxiety. You might be feeling abused and abandoned, or might be suffering from financial struggle, or have illness that is severe and terminal, and the doctors might have told you to go home and get ready because they don't have anything they can do for you. They cannot fix you up. But you know what? We serve a great God. We serve a God that is powerful, that is a healer, that is a God that is able to take care of any circumstance that you might be going through. Yes. So please hang in there. Be physically, mentally first strong, and spiritually strong. Hang on to the God you serve, because he is a miracle God. He's a healer. He's a provider. Now, I want to share with you the journey that it took me to be where I am today. I grew up in a beautiful family. My parents were kind. They were loving people. They were humble. And they treated everybody with love. They didn't care whether they were Tutsi, they were short, or had wider nose, skinny bones. One thing that they taught us was that we are all created in God's image, and we are all God's children. I remember before the genocide, I went to school, and segregation had started in Rwanda. And my teacher, fourth grade teacher, math teacher, great guy, but that morning he told the entire classroom to stand up and stand in front of the class. And he said, well, today you're going to see by your ethnicity. So as I'm standing in front of the class, everybody is going back and taking their seats with their ethnic groups, the Tutsis on the left side and the Hutu on the right side. And I'm standing there looking at my classmates who were standing there with me, who did not know who they were. And I said, I have no idea who I am. I don't know if I'm a Tutsi or Hutu or Twa, because my parents avoided to talk about those differences. It didn't matter to them. So the teacher said to the rest of us, as my classmate marked me, because they thought I was pretending not to know. I was among the top students, so they said, there's no way she do not know this. She must know that she is one of those, either the Tutsi or Hutu. So the teacher said, you go home, ask your parents, and if they don't give you the answer, do not come back to school. You'll be expelled. So for me, just for this discovery of who I was, I ran home as fast as I can, and I was just happy to know that my mom was home, and I said, hi, and I said, who are we? Who am I? And she looked at me shocked. What are you talking about? And I said, are we Tutsi? Are we Hutu? Are we Twa? Who are we? And then she said, oh, Jeanne, don't worry about all that stuff. You're a child of God. So I went, changed out of my uniform, but I knew I had to find out who I was, who we were. Went back and I came back to her and I said, Mom, I have to know. And then she said to me, she took my hands in hers and said, you are Tutsi. And that feeling of being a minority, because almost like 10% of my classmates were the Tutsis and the rest were Hutus and Twa. It didn't feel so great. But what was important to me as a child when she said, God loves the Tutsi, the Hutu the same way. So don't worry about that. Don't bother yourself about ethnicity. Those were my parents. Just to fast forward, my parents, I grew up very close to my family. My aunties, my uncles, my grandparents were in the neighborhood, was just in a walking distance. So I grew up around love. And I grew up with 10 siblings. So I know how to share my stuff. If you're from a family of 10, nothing is yours. Even if it has your name on it, it's not yours. So growing up, I had a twin sister, Jeannette, and Paul too is from a family of 10. So we both know how to share. So Jeannette was somehow my hero as a twin sister. We shared everything. Sometimes we shared thoughts as well, which is strange. We looked alike a lot, but she was taller than me, and she was physically stronger than me, so she'll beat me up, but she'll protect me from everybody else. So just again, to fast forward, on April 6th, right before the genocide started, when the plane shot down in the capital city of Rwanda, the borders of Rwanda were sealed and the machetes had been imported and the hatred was just on the surface. I mean, we heard it from the teachers, we heard it from neighbors telling us to enjoy our last few days in Rwanda, that we were going to be killed. But again, my parents sheltered us from the hatred. On April 6th, actually on April 7th, I remember my dad coming home. My dad was a 6.5 tall, 7 foot tall. So he was a giant to me as a child, and I felt protected in his presence. And he was calm and quiet. He had been elected as a mediator in the community, somebody who would bring people together if there was disputes. Whether there was a dispute over land or family issues, my dad was a guy that they would come to and just sit and kind of help them before they go to court. And sometimes they would not end up going to court because my father would sit there and reason with them. And I don't remember a family that came with a conflict that left without shaking hands or hugging each other. But on April 7th, when he came home, he was shocked. He looked as if he had seen something that he's never seen before. And then he gathered all of us children in our living room for our final family meeting. And he took my 9 siblings, 9 of us, and divided us in groups of 3. He gave me Teddy and Teta, who were 3 years old. And I will cry, so sorry. Teddy and Teta were 3, and he said, you will take care of them. And then he took my twin sister, Jeanne, and gave them the siblings that were younger than Teddy and Teta, Kaishema and Byiringiro. And then took my older brother, Aimable, and gave him the brothers who follow me, Kiza and Michael. Jeanette and I, we looked at each other and said, hold on a minute. Our older brother's taking the ones who can walk by themselves. Because Kiza and Michael, they were 6 and 7. So my dad had a plan. He told me to go to my aunt who was married to a Hutu. And he knew they would protect us. And then my sister Jeanette went to the neighbor, one of our neighbors, who was a good friend, good Hutu neighbor. And my brother, I don't remember which family my father sent him to. But when we arrived to my auntie's home, they squeezed us in this tiny room where there were other men, women, and children who had fled there. They were afraid that they would be killed. So they came in, and my aunt said, yeah, just join the group. And then more and more and more people came in that tiny room. By the evening, it was hard to breathe because we were just sitting and standing, and people were just anxious because we can hear the voices outside, people screaming, people pleading as they're being chased and being killed on the spot. As we hear bombs and grenades go off in the house, we're just shocked that at one point they might get to us as well. When my auntie's husband came in, he said, everybody has to go. And so I grabbed my twin sisters, and then we headed to the back of the room because we are family. I said, hey, they're going to protect us. So I made a way, everybody passed by and left the room. And then it was me standing there, and I said, hey, uncle, I ran to hug my uncle, my auntie's husband. And then he looked very cold. He said, you have to go as well. And I said, oh, no, uncle, this is Jeanne, and this is Teddy and Teta. And he said, oh, I know who you are, but you have to go. And that was the first time I felt betrayed by family. So knowing that we were sent to meet our death, my body was trembling, I was sweating. I just knew that we might not make it. That night, we slept in the cornfield, and having Teddy and Teta there, multiple times they reminded me that I somehow kidnapped them, that I should take them back home to be with their mom and dad. And April is one of those months where it rains a lot in Rwanda. So the rain somehow helped, but it also didn't help us. When it was raining, we would be trembling because it was cold and the mosquitoes were just buzzing, all the insects buzzing around. And so I battled with the twins in the middle of the night, telling them that we had to sleep there. And somehow this was a camping challenge. We've never slept outside. So they were up all night telling me that I had to take them home And in the middle of that night, my older brother showed up in the same cornfield. Now there were 6 of us in the cornfield. And I thought to myself that if the killers somehow showed up in this cornfield, they'll kill 6 of us from the same family. And so in the morning, my brother said, let's just separate. I go my way with my twin sisters, and he goes away with the brothers. But I said, no, you are taking the twins, and I'm taking the boys. I try to switch them off quick. And the twins looked at me, and they had their little lips just curled up. No, we want to go with you. But I tried to convince my brother that it was the best decision. Since he was older, he should take the young ones. And he said, well, Dad had planned that you keep the twins. So we walked out of this cornfield, and as we listened to the killers just chasing and running after Tutsi men and women and children, we cannot help that we're actually walking to be killed as well. But we had to get out of that bush, out of that cornfield. And for the first time, a group of Interahamwe, which is a group of killers, they call them Interahamwe because the translation is attack together. That's what that is. Interahamwe means to attack together. So we saw a group of them coming towards us, and they said, don't be afraid. And my brother had told me not to run away. But the first thing I wanted to do, as I looked at these people with machetes, with blood all over them, first thing I wanted to do was run. But he said, if you run, you cannot outrun with them, with the twins. Even if you run with the twins, you will not outrun these men. So they approached us. My brother was in front, and he gets, they told him how they were going to kill him. And my brother, who was in front, he moves all the way to the back. And then it was me. And one of the men looked at me and said, that forehead it cannot belong to a Hutu. Those long arms cannot belong to a Hutu. So he's sizing me up. And when he said that he was going to trim my arms, he took me and he lined me up by a tree. And when he raised the machete, I peed on myself. I knew he was going to end my life. And that was the first time God protected us. They saw another man running away, and they pursued him, and then we split it. It was the first time by many times. The other day I counted how many times God saved my life. And I cannot tell you the number. When I say close to dying, when I was walking in the presence of evil, when I was walking in the presence of people with machetes who I knew they were going to kill me, but God, all I kept saying, God, protect me. God, protect us, blind them that they might not see us. You know the song we sing here a lot, that even when we cannot see, He's working. It is indeed true. We might not see Him, but He is in our presence. He sees us in every circumstance. Just to fast forward, as we were just in the bushes, hiding, eating whatever thing that we could find, and working hard to convince the twins that the seeds or the flowers or the plants, that those were eatable. God was providing. Somehow they found those things, those berries, enjoyable, and they will laugh, or they'll have me try them and go, okay, we'll try them too. So at one point I went to this neighbor who was a very kind Hutu man that we knew before the genocide. were just so desperate and wanted to be in a warm place because, again, it was still raining and our clothes are drenched. So we went to him and said that we needed a place to stay at least for minutes so we can rest. And this man took us in and gave us some food to eat and sent us in this room with other Tutsi women and children who have came to hide in his home. And as we're hearing more guns going off and bombs going off, in the morning, one of my uncles, Uncle Ed, came in and he was shocked. Just like my parents, he looked like he has just been terrified by something. And he'll put his hand up on his head and will go like this, and he's shaking, and I can tell he's trembling. And I say, Uncle, what is it? And my uncle wasn't the kind of hugging person, so he gave me a big bear hug, and I said, this is not normal. Why is he hugging me? Then again, he'll put his hands up, and you can tell there's something he wants to tell me, but he cannot. And I said, tell me. I mean, I can hear it from outside. Is everything okay? Is it our family? Who is it? And then he danced around it for a while, but finally he told me. He said to me that he had seen my mother's dead body. That my mom was killed. And for the first time, my head spun. I didn't know what to make of it. I felt anxiety, I felt ulcers. It just felt like my life just shattered at that moment. And then he hugged me again and told me that my mother, that although she was dead, my brother, who was a 3-week-old, was still alive in my mother's back. A 3-week-old was on my mother's back, but my mother was dead. And he said to me, well, if you want to save your little brother, he gave me directions where my mother was. And over again, I debated whether I should go and save this little guy's life. But I felt a big connection to this little boy because during the genocide, my mother couldn't go to the hospital to give birth to him. So in the middle of the night when she had contraction, she called me to come and help her out because my father had gone to help other families who had called him for help. And I was actually the only one who heard her call. So I ran in the living room to help her out, deliver this little guy. And my parents, they said to honor me, I had to give him a name. And I named him Sunrise Mucho. So when my uncle told me where my mother was, I said, okay, I will try, but I'm thinking to myself that I cannot keep the twins quiet. Now I'm going to have to work with a 3-week-old baby. But I had to try. I knew my parents, I knew my mother would want me to go and save his life. So I walked there, and it was getting harder and harder to walk through because there were so many dead bodies then. Then I told the twin sisters I put him in a bush and I said, you stay here, I'll go and bring baby Mucho and you guys can hold them and play with him. So they're getting excited. I mean, they're toddlers. They got excited. Then I said, please promise me that you will not run out of this bush until I come back with Mucho, okay? They promised me that they would not get out. I ran back up in this banana field and I'm searching for my mom. And I'm listening carefully to this baby to cry. And I did not hear a baby crying. And I kept moving and looking at every dead body, and some of them were dead completely and others were not. They had hacked them with machetes or have hit them on their heads, but they were not completely dead. And some of them are pulling me, asking me for help. I mean, it just looked like could not explain what this area looked like. And finally, I spotted my mother. And I reached down to pick up this little guy. And his little limbs were in pieces. They had butchered him in pieces. You cannot understand the kind of evil that we experienced. And so, thank you, babe. I walked back to the twin sisters, and many of you parents, you know really well, they ask a million questions in one. And they say, "Where's baby Mucho? Why did you come without him? You promised." And hearing them asking about Mucho, it made my head even spin. And I hated that question every time they asked, because I knew I cannot explain to them that he's dead. I could not share with anyone that my mother was dead, except God. I said, "God, you see me in this. You see what I am going through." Just fast forward. Sorry. So we spent more and more months in the bushes, and we're eating berries. We're getting used to this vegan diet of fresh grass. And the twins, of course, I'm trying to entertain them, and I'll find all kinds of things, and I'll draw and play with twigs, pick up flowers and anything to keep their minds off. But their time span, as you know, it's very short. They say, "We are done playing with the twigs. We are done playing with flowers. We want to go home." At one point, they kept telling me that I had kidnapped them and that I had to take them back home. And I promised that we will go home. And at one point, we made it to our home just to see, out of desperation, we went to see if there's anything else, if there's anybody else. And we found out that our home, they had thrown a bomb, and the roof had gone off. Actually, almost half of the foundation of the home had been destroyed. And it was at that point we actually realized that our compound area was a killing squad. But one of our house guard was there. It was a gentleman who was a Hutu, and he was kind. And he tried to misdirect the people who had actually came running after us to kill us. And he told them, "Oh yeah, they have run away." And as we lay down on the grass in the bush right under his feet, he misdirected them and kept telling them that we had gone on the other side. And this guard told us never to come back again. But at one point we came back to our home because I was told by the mayor. In the genocide, there was this, towards almost at the end of the genocide, in the 2 months, I mean, again, it's raining and it's pouring. We're still wearing the same clothes. Now at this point, we have laces fitting off our bodies. My hair had been twisted. My twin sister make fun of me that I looked like a little Bob Marley. Same thing that my twin sister said. At one point, I just was so desperate and I wanted a warm meal. And I went to this family that I used to work for my family in the middle of the night. And we knocked on the door and they said, well, our home had been searched multiple times. One of the things that was happening in Rwanda is that the government made sure that the families who were Hutus, in order not to keep anybody else in the home, they were threatening to kill them and kill the people that they were hiding, or make them kill the families, the Tutsis that they've been hiding. But this family were generous enough to keep us in their home overnight. Then in the middle of the night, they heard a group of Hutu coming, the killers, and they told me to get out of the house. And I ran and I pulled my twin sisters in the bedroom of mixed my twins with their children, and then I ran out of the house. As I was running, I ran as fast as I could, and then I hid under this grass. Those leaves of, I don't know if you've ever seen potato leaves. So I slid myself underneath, and this group of men came after me. And at one point, as they're hacking on the bushes, one of them stepped on me, and I'm praying, and I say, God, please blind them, that they might not see me. Protect me, God. And as I'm praying again, I saw this light in the sky, just glare, radiating towards me, and I felt a sense of peace. And I knew it was the presence of God, because you cannot feel peace when somebody has a machete over your head and a club to kill you. I felt a sense of peace, and the man walked away. God is great, guys. God is amazing. And again, to fast forward, at one point in this, we get desperate again, and then we went to the family that my father had sent my twin sister and the boys. This woman looks at me, and I knock on her door, and I say, I just want to see my twin sister. Many of you who have twins, you know the kind of love they have for each other. I missed her, and I miss having a conversation with somebody my age or somebody who's not a toddler. So I knocked on her door, this woman's door, and I said, I just want to see my twin sister. And she said, your twin sister is under my bed. I feed them sometimes when I'm able, but there's some people in my home who do not know that your twin sister's here. So shh, and go. Then when I walked away, she asked me, oh, have you seen your father? And I said, I haven't seen my dad since the genocide started. And then she told me that my dad was there at her house. He had came to check on my twin sister and my little brothers. And then just hearing that my dad was alive, knowing how giant he looked, how I felt like he was going to protect me, that I could actually just say, you know what, it's your responsibility to find a place for us to hide, to find food for us. I just knew if I found Dad, I would not have to worry about what we're going to eat, where we're going to hide. It will be on him. So I asked this woman, I said, where did he go? And she said, if you run this way, you might find him. So I ran as fast as I could. And it was getting harder and harder, and I told my twin sisters to stay in the bush, that I was going to go get Dad. So I ran and I kept running and calling Dad. And I couldn't find him. Then I ran some more. I was determined to find him. And at one point I heard this man on the other side of the hill saying, "Dore nyamuremure, dore nyamuremure," which means, "There goes the tall man. Attack and surround him." And I can see this man walking down this hill, and I'm keeping my eyes fixed on him. And I'm saying, "God, protect this man." And I'm going, "Please stoop down, lean down. If I can see you, everybody else can see you." I spoke to him as if he can hear me. And there were men running up the street and down the street towards this man. There was another group from both left and right. And the closer he got, sorry. The closer he got, I realized that was my father. These men were pursuing him, and he was just walking slow. And they met him in the middle of the street, and they hugged him with machetes. I forgot I wore mascara. And as I watched my father being hacked with machetes, my world just spun around, and I said, "God, why? Why, God?" And again, like my mother, when I was walking away, I felt her voice telling me to forgive them. And again, when my father, when they dragged his body in the street, I felt like his voice was telling me to forgive them. And I said, "There's no way I cannot forgive this, taking the precious person in my world." My forgiveness is something I'll talk about soon. I need to speed up. Just fast forward again, at one point I get to, they said in the genocide that they were going to forgive women and children. And I went to the mayor to confirm if this was true, that they were forgiving women and children. And the mayor said, "Yeah, that's true." So he said, "Well, I know a group where you need to go to be protected, and that they're going to protect you." And this was the second time the mayor had sent me to the killers. So when I arrived to this group, this village where he sent me, I realized that there was a killing squad in that neighborhood. And these men were eating and drinking, taking their break, and they said, "Well, we'll kill you in 15 minutes. Go have a seat over there. We'll kill you in 15 minutes. I looked at the twins and I said, "Say your prayers." And they tapped on me and they said, "Are they going to kill us?" And I said, "Of course not. Just pray." You see, even Satan knows that God believes. They told me to pray, but I did nothing but pray. I pray and I ask God to protect us. I pray that He'll blind them. I pray and I ask God to soften their hearts. And as time went by, 15 minutes passed and I'm praying. 30 minutes went by. They say, "Pray us some more. We're going to kill you in 30 minutes. An hour went by. And the more time went, I could see the expression on their face soften. The men and the women in that area, they looked at us with empathy. You see, God can make your enemies even love you or soften towards you. And this man who was the main person, the leader of this group, said to us that they said, "Well, let's kill them in the morning." And the women said, well, if you're going to kill them in the morning, there's no reason to starve them. Go ahead and feed them. So I was like, okay. Teta and Teta, the minute they saw a plate in front of them, they wolfed that food down and they were ready for some more. We ate until our stomach got sick because we weren't used to a warm meal. And then this man who was the leader in the group decided that we would actually stay in his home. The morning came, I tried to escape that night, but I was unable. But I knew, again, even when I didn't know, God had a plan. I stayed. And at one point, again, just to fast forward, of course, this man sexually abused me. He raped me. And I tried to run again. And when he knew it was time for the army, the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Army, which was the Tutsi army, was taking over the Rwanda, many Hutus were fleeing the country. So this man decided that I would actually flee the country with him to Congo. But he didn't want me to take Teta and Teta, so he separated us. He took Teta away, and I had to find a place to take Teta. And again, to fast forward, the sexual abuse continued in the refugee camp. And again, I'm fast forwarding here because of time. And at one point, we get in the refugee camp. I mean, it was just horrific. People are dying from hunger. Sanitaries just, I'm still wearing the same outfit, and I'm just bones, skin and bones. And at one point, they get desperate, and this man decides that, actually, a little step backward here, because I want to share this with you. In the refugee camp, at one point, before we crossed the river to get into Congo, they lined us up. They have identified us as Tutsis. And I was in line as number 23 to be killed because my features, they knew I was a Tutsi. And they killed every single person in front of me. And when they got to me, I was frozen. And then the man took me right by the river and then threw me down on the ground and raised a machete to kill me. But this woman in the background started screaming and saying, "No, that's my daughter, don't kill her." And I say, "I know my mother's dead. When she get here, she's going to find out that I'm not her child, and she's gonna walk back." And then when she gets there, still, she claimed me. She said, "That's my child." And I look at her and I said, "I don't know who she is," but I didn't tell that to anyone. I said to myself, "I'm not her daughter." This woman looked beautiful, glowing, flawless. And the men who were about to kill me with a machete and said, "Okay, we're going to investigate. Don't say anything to this man." They separate us just like a police investigation. So they took me on one side, they took her on the other side. And in Rwanda, they had identity card that has the birthplace, the names, the age. So in this woman, they asked me my age. They asked me where I was born. They asked me for my name, and I gave them all of that. And in this woman's identity card had exactly Jeanne Umutoniwase, which was the nickname that I gave these men. I gave them my age, the location where I was born, and everything matched. Hallelujah. Our God is great. God is amazing. And then this woman walked with me. She took my hand, and I could feel just so light. And as she walks with me, she said, go with these people. I'll be with you, and I'll protect you. Just keep going with them. And I went, and I looked back, and I'm holding her hands like this, and then I looked back, and then I released her hands, and in an instant, she disappeared. Hallelujah. She disappeared. And I know without a doubt that God had sent an angel, my guardian angel, to guide me, to be with me. And there was this man in the refugee camp, David. He hated my guts. He had told everybody that he had killed over 400 children who looked like me, and he wanted to kill me. And everybody in the refugee camp, including his own mother, advocated for me. The people who have questioned my existence advocated for me to be alive. You see, my friends, God can use your enemy to love you, to protect you. David's mother shielded me when David was going to kill me over and over and over again. And at one point, David he said he was going to kill me, and that was the day. And little did I know, the group got together and his family decided to kill David because he was going to kill me. They killed David right in front of my presence. And there was nothing in my bones, in my life, in my body that rejoiced when I saw another day human suffer. But I'm sharing this with you because their people decided to kill David to protect me. God protected me. I'm here because he had protected me, because he walked with me. And I'm sorry we're running out of time, but I want to share really quick about forgiveness. Over the years, actually, fast forward, I ran away from the refugee camp as I was going to be sold to get married at 10 years old. I heard the voice in the middle of the night telling me that it was my time to go, and I ran back to Rwanda. And I'm running back. It took me months to get back to Rwanda. I left my home April 7th, and I came back to Rwanda in December. So I've been out for about 7 to 8 months, and I'm still wearing the same clothes. And when I get back to my village, all my family, my aunt, my uncles, everybody had been wiped out. And then this is where I was, and I'm questioning, and I'm saying, God, you saved me to come back to this isolated place, to be alone. Why did you save me? To be here, to be alone, to be by myself. Then, and again, I'm fast forwarding, forcing you to read the book. And I'm there, and I'm just so shocked that in just that short of time, everybody has been gone. But then there was this woman, our God's mother, told me to go to the orphanage home to see if any of my siblings had survived. And I ran to the orphanage home, and I stopped, and I'm going like, what if I found out that nobody survived? But I ran, and when I'm coming up the street, and I hear somebody call Jeanette. That's my twin sister. And I say, could that be her? And then I hear Jeanette one more time. And then finally, I saw her face. My twin sister had survived. She had made it. And she saw me, and she thought I was a ghost. So she ran back and she's like, no, it cannot be my twin sister. So she's running back and people are forcing her to come and meet me. And they say, that's the twin sister you always talk about. So they brought us together and she hugged me and I hugged her so tight. And I'm praising the Lord because for so many months I've been praying, asking God to protect my siblings. And that was my answer, the answer to my prayers. And for Jeanette to test if I wasn't a ghost, she took a step back and she punched me in the stomach. And as I'm holding myself, she said, I have surprises for you. She took me to inside the orphanage home. And the surprise was my siblings. Teddy and Teta had made it. My brothers and sisters had made it. So hallelujah. Glory to God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. And really quick, over time, God told me that I had to forgive all those inhumane acts that I've seen, that I've heard, but I wasn't ready. The orphanage told me that they were full at the capacity that they couldn't keep me in, so I was a homeless on the street at 10. But I didn't care. I've been homeless since April 7th. But again, over and over again, the Holy Spirit told me to forgive. Those words, forgive them. And I said, oh, God, I don't know, and I don't have the strength, I don't have the capacity to forgive such an act. I was depressed, had anxiety. But over and over again, God told me, forgive them. You know, one of the men that I really consider one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela, he spent 27 years in prison. And he said, as I was walking towards the door, the gate to my freedom, I knew if I did not leave behind the bitterness, the anger, I would still be a prisoner, or I'd still be in prison. And that was my case. I had migraine headaches. I was in the hospital a lot. The doctors have scanned my brain to see if I had any sort of like brain damage, but it was because I was angry. I had bitterness. You know what? Not forgiving the inhumane, not forgiving the things that people have done to you could cause physical illness in your body. And I can tell you this, there's nothing God wants us to do that isn't good for us. God put it in my heart to forgive these people because he knew I would be free. And God told me, as I say, God, I cannot do it by myself for years. I want you to help me. I want you to give me the strength to forgive them. He told me to read the Bible and read about forgiveness. And whether I was reading through Matthew 5, verse 44, it was that Ephesians and Romans, there were things that I was finding that were common, that you have to forgive, love, and pray for your enemies. And I said, God, I don't know. You're asking me to pray for my enemies and bless them. I don't know about that. But over and over again, he said, pray and bless them and forgive them. And I can tell you, when I was able to forgive the sexual abuse I experienced under the hands of my foster parents who took me after the genocide, once I was able to forgive the men who killed my father, my mother, once I was able to forgive the people who killed those innocent men and women and children, I felt like I was in a new body. I was free. I had the freedom that I have never experienced. So again, you might be experiencing that kind of anger and bitterness because of the things that I have done in your life, the unfairness and the injustice. But I want to encourage you, if you have to fast and pray, pray for your enemies, pray for the people who hate your guts. You see, if you want to make the enemy, in this case that's Satan, if you want to make him mad, pray and bless the people who do not like you. Amen. and love them, love on them, because through that you find freedom. Yes. Praise the Lord. I feel like I eaten up the time, so sorry.
So just,
Sorry.
just two things, just real quick. God's called us to minister to orphans. Jeanne's dedicated her life to orphans. She was an orphan, so she could relate to that struggle. And when I say we, I mean all you, because by supporting the book, which we are so grateful for, proceeds of that will go to our program to help 1 million orphans around the globe. We're going to start, of course, in Burundi and Rwanda. So thank you so much. We can't leave here. The other thing was just to thank you. Thank you so much. We didn't ask for this. We're shocked. We're overwhelmed. You guys have all, from the staff to all you beautiful people, been so kind, supportive, compassionate, and loving. And we are just touched as deeply as we can be touched. I'm reminded of something Pastor Larry said. When I first started coming here, I was kind of from a rough background, abused into the Catholic Church and skeptical of churches in general. But something Pastor Larry said, and I'm not going to quote him verbatim, but he said essentially if this building was gone, the church would still be here because of the people here, because of the connections here. And I believe that to be the case. I've never felt at home like I do here. And the same for Jeanne. You guys are all in alignment with Jesus Christ and with God. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
There's no way in the time that we have to be able to articulate everything that Jeanne walked through. That's why the book's so key. There's so many things that she experienced. To experience the racial hatred towards her just because of her ethnicity. To make her feel like she was unworthy, didn't count, didn't matter. To walk through all that, and then also to walk through the brutality of Rwanda during those 100 days, and then her journey through all that, experiencing everything she walked through, and to be at the end of it say, you know what, Jesus is greater, and Jesus is the victor, and if he can forgive, I can forgive. Coming in today, we talked about what this looks like, and I knew this. I know there's people in this room today that are hurting. I know there's people in this room that have been wounded emotionally, relationally, physically. I know there's people in this room that feel like they don't matter, that they feel attacked from outside, from within. I know there's a lot of us, and Jeanne's story, Paul's as well, relates to all of us on a lot of levels. But this is what I know. The same God and the same Lord Jesus who has walked with them walks with us today. And the same Lord that delivers and sets free and redeems, because he is a redeeming God when we allow him to redeem us. Because the Lord had to do that. This wasn't just one moment in time. The Lord has been, it's a process of redemption. But it's been so beautiful. And I've shared to Jeanne and Paul that when I see them in our church, knowing their story, lifting their hands and worshiping Jesus, I say to myself, there's nothing that I've walked through that should forbid me from lifting my hands and worshiping Jesus. I want us to do something. Will we stand together all over this building? Again, you've only heard a fraction of this story. She was 9 years old. Her twins that she's a twin, and the twins that she was taking care of, Teta and Teddy. And Teta's here today. Teta right here on the front row. They were just 3 years old. They were 3. But God gave her the foreknowledge enough, even when they were walking down the streets and they would see them coming, they stuck pebbles up their nose to try to make their noses wider. Would put wood on their head to make it look like they were working. All that to try to help blend in so the killing squads would maybe pass them by. And if you read the book, her defiance on some of them, looking at them in the eye, says, "No, I am a Hutu." At 9 years old, but God kept. And then the life dealing with all the other things, the sexual abuse and all that came after, and being able to forgive. Would you bow your heads? Father, I love you. I thank you, Lord, for your protecting hand, your keeping hand. So much was lost, and yet so much was saved. I'm reminded of the Bible, the story of Joseph, who in captivity and lived through so much abuse in his own life. And one day, standing at a place where with authority, he was able to say, what others meant for evil, God meant for good, for the saving of many lives. I pray, Lord, that lives will be changed through Jeanne's story, that you will open up doors and platforms for her to share the story of grace and redemption and forgiveness, because it's a story we all need to hear, no matter who we are, no matter where we're from. In the name of Jesus. I want us to do this. Our heads are bowed real quickly. I wonder how many in this room would lift your hand and say, "Pastor Larry, I am dealing with internally feelings of inferiority. I feel like people make me feel less than what I am. And I just, would you just, maybe that relates to you. Would you lift your hand? If that's anybody here. You feel less than. Yeah. I see hands across the room. I wonder if there's those in this room that would lift their hand and say, "Pastor Larry, I am dealing with just real issues in my own life of just forgiveness. I have been hurt, I've been wounded, and I struggle with forgiveness." Would you be honest enough to lift your hand across this room? Can I just see your hand? Yeah. Would you do that? I see your hands. I'd like to ask some of our prayer partners we spoke to earlier to come and help us stand here across the front. I want to give us a chance to pray. Our staff to come, our board of directors, some of our prayer team, you'd help us as well. I want us to have a chance to pray for people. Listen, this is real. Everything we talk about is real. So beyond the story, I want us to think about where we're at today in our own lives. So this is what we want to do. John is here. John and Paul, they wanted to do this. If you're here this morning and you're in this service and you're battling with forgiveness, maybe you're battling with those feelings of being attacked, feeling lost in the crowd, whatever it is, I want you to step out. You lifted your hand. Would you just step out right where you're at? We want to pray with you right where you're at. Come on. Would you do that? You lifted your hand. Just step out and come. Come to one of these prayer partners that are right down here in the front. Just step out and come. Don't wait. Don't hold back. Go ahead and come. Go ahead and come. Because we want to pray with you. We want to pray with you. Go ahead and come. I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Steve. We're going to begin to pray. I know we got another crowd that's going to be coming in here in just a few minutes. But as we're praying and as they're singing, if you want somebody to pray with you, would you step out and come? You're feeling lost in the crowd. You're feeling inferior. You're feeling like you're struggling with forgiveness, struggling with hope. This is your chance to come. Father, I love you today, Lord. God, we give this time to you. We pray and speak healing and life into every single person. Jesus, you are the God, the great one. You said, as I forgive, you forgive also. So, Lord, I pray that right now in Jesus' name, we surrender all to you for your glory. Pastor Steve.
Amen. Well, thank everyone for coming this morning. Please stop by the table out there and support their ministry and pick up a book and hear the story as it's expounded in the pages there. But what a powerful morning. Thank you for coming. Come back tonight at 6 o'clock for